Hey everybody, Guy here from Chit Chat. Thanks so much for continuing to listen. Just got done recording a really fun and kind of different episode. Gary Osberg. Gary and I met just in the last handful of weeks, maybe a month ago. He was recommended to me by friend and former podcast guest Ron Paulson. Gary just told me that this summer in August he will turn 82 years old, and Gary has been in Minnesota a long time. Really fun, interesting story. He works for Minnesota Public Radio, and we had a really interesting conversation about our community and about some of his stories from growing up. And yeah, I'm excited for you to hear it now. Thanks for continuing to listen. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Gary, thanks so much for coming and joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Gary, would you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Gary Osberg. I represent Minnesota Public Radio, where you too can reach a unique audience with your unique message.
And how long have you been with the public?
26 years in October.
Cool.
26 years.
That's great. And has Minnesota Public Radio changed in the how has it changed the last 2.5
We lost
decades?
Garrison Keillor.
Yeah.
Prairie Companion.
Mm-hmm.
But I still subscribe to Writer's Almanac.
Yeah.
Every morning when I'm eating my cereal, I'm listening to Writer's Almanac.
Nice.
It's no longer current.
Mm-hmm.
It's February 21st, 2014. So tomorrow will be February 22nd, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how long it's going to go, but he quit doing them, up to currently,
Yep.
and he just went back to the archives
like
I do. I do a Friday note every Friday, but what I had my granddaughter do, and it started out, the subject line on the email was a Prairie Home Companion this week. And all I did was to forward the email that I got from Garrison Keillor's team on Thursday, so that Friday morning I would tell my people,
check it out.
I forwarded it.
Yeah.
Well, one Friday morning, there was no email to forward. So I called.
So what do you do?
I called them, and I almost lost my job. You never call Garrison Keillor's production the day before a show.
Right.
I mean, tomorrow's the show
Yep.
live from the Fitzgerald Theater at 5 o'clock. I'm calling them to complain that I haven't gotten an email. Are you kidding me? So I had to make up something. So what I did was I went to their website and found out who the guests were. So at least I knew that much.
Yep.
And then I told a little story.
Nice.
So then,
in what year was that? What year did you send your first one?
2004 was my first one.
And you have done every Friday since then?
Every Friday.
Yeah. And what? So it kind of started as
telling people about a Prairie Home Companion.
And what is it now? And how did you kind of make that transition?
Well, the first thing that happened when we changed the title of the subject line when Garrison got in trouble, and so we had, but by then, Chris Thiele had already taken over as the host. Garrison had experimented with a couple different hosts because he was getting to the point where he thought he might retire. Chris Thiele was already the host. It was still a Prairie Home Companion, but Chris Thiele being the host, who was a genius. He's a mandolin player, and he's got the Genius Grant. I know there is such a thing. I probably don't qualify. But anyway, so then Garrison, that Friday I had to change the name to something else because he was gone now. Well, then the following Friday I changed it to, because they came up with a new name, Live from Here with Chris Thiele. So the next Friday, the subject line was Live from Here with Chris Thiele this week. So that went on until COVID hit. Then we lost the show. We had to cancel the show. Chris Thiele and all those people just disappeared. So
into the night.
Just gone.
Yep.
So I'm at home. COVID had hit right after my surgery. I told you about before we got on the air.
Yep.
How Dr. Benjamin Mueller, an exchange student from Germany who never went back.
Yeah.
He works from Twin City Spine Center, is where his headquarters is in Minneapolis. And he made it possible for me to walk again because my spinal cord was compressed in two places. And in fact, it was my masseuse, Dana Peterson in St. Joseph, who was the first to say,
you've got an issue.
Well, I told her I have a hard time walking up a ramp. There's a ramp at St. John's from behind the power plant and you go up.
Yeah.
My office is the third floor of Wimmer Hall, where public radio got its start, January 22nd, 1967. So we just celebrated 58 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But anyway, there's a ramp. It goes right by the warehouse.
Kind of like walking up towards.
Ramp.
Yeah.
You got to go from one level to another level. It's a ramp. It's not steps.
Right.
I couldn't hardly walk up
Is
that
it the
ramp.
one? Is it the one that's like kind of walking up towards the refectory?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were Johnny?
I sang in the boys' choir as a kid.
Oh.
And when Razor scooters came out and
You
were really
tried that?
cool, I brought my Razor scooter
There's a
that I
sign.
got for Christmas.
It says right there, don't do
It
it.
didn't say it at the time because nobody knew
no
what a
sign.
Razor scooter was. They were still new, and we used to absolutely
Absolutely love that.
shred on that ramp.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a sign that no skateboarding
Yeah.
allowed. So you're the one
It's
that
probably
caused the
yeah,
sign.
It was us. Mhm.
I love it.
I was 12.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So anyway, I went to Mayo, world-renowned surgeon, Dr. Wubba. We won't use any names here. But anyway, except for Dr. Benjamin Mueller, we're going to give him a plug, but not
Sure.
the other guys. So 4 times I went to Mayo Clinic and finally got to see a world-renowned back surgeon. And they all kinds of MRIs and stuff and x-rays that were done before that same day. And I was in his office 9 minutes, and half of that time he was on his cell phone booking his flight to Italy. And he basically said, I can't help you. This postmaster, Marnay, came to me. Marnay was her name. Marnay Hurd, I think. Marnay Hurd. She was the postmaster at St. John. She told me about Dr. Benjamin Mueller. So I called Dr. Benjamin Mueller's office after she told me that he had helped 2 guys from Alexandria, where she lived, that Mayo couldn't help. I got to see him right away. And he pulled up the MRI just by calling up Mayo, and there it was in his office. And he said, I don't know why they've been treating you down here, because it's obvious your spinal cord is compressed in 2 places. And he said, we could try injections. I said, no more injections. I want surgery.
Okay.
So he said, yeah, we can do that. So March 3rd, 2020, my brother Bill drove me down, and we spent the night at the Holiday Inn in downtown St. Paul. We checked in at the United Hospital at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I went under the knife. And the pandemic hit the next week.
Yeah. Incredible.
So then I was home for 7 weeks with a Foley. We won't go into what a Foley is, but it's home with a Foley.
Google it, I guess.
Google it. You find out what a Foley is. And then I started back at work again from my kitchen table with my laptop, because we weren't allowed to go to the office.
Right.
And I had to change the title of the Friday note to News from Millstream Village. Kind of a takeoff on the news from Lake Wobegon.
Yeah.
News from Millstream Village, because that's where I was.
Yeah.
I'm the first resident of Millstream Village. I bought a cottage in 2013, moved in a blizzard. 2 guys from Reds Transfer and I moved from above Bella Cucina, the Millstream shops and lofts. Well, above, I was on the very far western loft, northwestern, and moved from the loft above Bella Cucina to the cottage, 36 by 24, but actually with 6-inch walls, it's only 35 by 23, so 805 square feet. And we got it done by noon in a blizzard. So I named it News from Millstream Village. And so that's what it's been ever since.
And what kinds of things do you usually put in your Friday letter?
I just write about my week, something that happened, or old stories. Today's Millstream Village, and so I asked my granddaughter, Kristen, I said, I want you to take these 20 years of Friday notes that I've got a folder for every year, starting with 2004. I want you to make a Friday, first Friday in January, second Friday in January, third, fourth, and fifth. There's no 5 Fridays in February, but every other month's going to have 1 through 5. So every Thursday, I go to this third Friday in February, and I start at the oldest.
And read what you've done.
And typically, I can't do better than 1 year ago or 2 years ago. So then I go to my website, and I Google a keyword in the story.
Okay.
Like today was about my becoming a draftsman by lying. And so I just put in, a keyword from that story. Up popped how it evolved into working for Minnesota Public Radio, from starting out with 0 education, because I went to the U of M in 1961. I graduated from Uppsala High School in 61. I was supposedly smart, so they put me into the Institute of Technology at the U of M. in fall of 61. And so I drank a lot of beer and played pool and got 4 incompletes my first quarter.
Really well done.
Really well done.
Really well done.
And the worst part was turning in this little blue notebook every Friday in English 103, a written assignment, and getting an F.
Sure.
I couldn't write for beans. I couldn't write at all. So anyway, that's what I wrote about today. I lied about being able to be a draftsman, got to be a good draftsman by just keeping at it.
Yeah.
Moved from drafting to selling office furniture because I was smart enough to put my home number in a letter that I wrote to General Office Products saying, we closed up the business, we can't pay your bill. And I sent that letter to 13 vendors that had sent or supplied things for Norwood Engineering Services in Roseville, the very first computerized drafting service bureau in the world. And so anyway, General Office Products, Jim Hellstrom called me back, the sales manager who had sold us the furniture. He said, well, I want my furniture back. I said, well, Jim, you sold us the furniture net 30. You didn't take a position on it. The bank took a position on it when the president borrowed more money. They've got your furniture. And at the end of the conversation, he said, well, if you ever need a job, let me know. So that's how I moved from the drafting world into the office furniture world.
And then how many years did you do that?
22 years.
Okay.
And I still dream about that industry.
Really?
I do. I love design. I mean, what I love design. I mean, the church at St. John's was designed by Marcel Breuer from the Bauhaus. I knew all that. I sold Knoll furniture.
Yeah.
I sold Herman Miller furniture. And I have Herman Miller furniture and Knoll furniture in my cottage.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's really neat.
I bought an Ames chair and ottoman for $700 in 1976.
That's kind of a steal now. Yeah.
Yeah. Look it up. Google that. Ames chair and ottoman. And so the problem is when I go, who's going to take the Ames chair? Well, the oldest granddaughter owns it.
She wants it.
She wants it, I think.
Which
she deserves it.
That's good.
I think she'll take care of it.
And she probably sat in your lap and you probably read to her.
Well, no, that was really, my daughter, single mother, decided to go back to college, and she worked as a bartender in St. Stephen's at Trobix every weekend. I had Kayla Marie every single Friday night through Sunday. A lot of times, she'd be dropped off on a Friday night at 2 years of age. And I had a crib, and so I was going to church then, Gethsemane Lutheran in Uppsala, Minnesota, and she would come, and my daughter didn't have time to wash her hair on a Friday. She was too busy. So I would lay Kayla Marie down on the kitchen sink in this house that was built in 1892, and wash her hair and pull those knots out with the comb. She'd be screaming the whole time, and we'd go to church.
Nice.
So that's what we did.
I think it's interesting that you have stuck with writing, in your own words. And the first time that we met, I remember you telling me about how you weren't a good writer at all, and that you have just stuck with it.
Right.
And I think there's a valuable lesson there just in general for people. If you are doing something and you aren't good at it, but you enjoy it and you want to be better at it, just stay at it and just keep pushing. And I think something like writing is being a good writer, or at least a competent, capable writer.
Yes.
It has so many incredible parallels or applications in the rest of your life that I think people should work on writing more, and kind of push into that. And if you have to just like communicate something, if you just have to speak it, there is a kind of mastery that you need to have to be able to communicate something.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to write something, the kind of mastery that you need, because as you're writing, you're thinking critically about what that thing is. It allows you to learn something and kind of like embody that information in a really unique kind of way.
Yeah.
I think more people should write.
I got a lot of feedback. When I started writing, I had no paragraphs. And so somebody, she was a professor at St. Cloud State in the art world. I was interested in the art world, involved in that. So she wrote back, don't you know how to do paragraphs? And
you're like, no, I don't.
And then I dated a English major for 11 and a half years, and she was not afraid to tell me when I was wrong.
Yeah.
So I did get schooling on it. And so now, when I take that folder and start at the very beginning in 2004, it gets better and better. And then when I cut and paste from my website, like I did this morning, I do change the words because, again, I've learned in the the one I used today was not done last year. It was done the year before. There's another one that I'll be using next year unless something exciting happens to me. I mean, if something really exciting happens to me during the week, I'll write a new one.
Yeah.
But a lot of time, at 82 years of age, laying on my back on the sofa, selling public radio spots for my iPhone, not a lot happening here, folks. I'm just doing my job. By the way, it's easier to resend an email from your iPhone than it is from your computer. It's just click, click, it's done. It looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
When you do it from your computer, it's got that forward thing and no. If you do it from your iPhone, it's just exactly the same. So every other day, I resend the email saying, please sign this agreement and return it to me. Not every day, every other day. So then I get the job done.
Yeah.
Eventually, they'll get tired of and they'll sign the contract and send it back, or tell me to go off.
Yeah. When I was in college, I had one of my roommates was the editor-in-chief of our school newspaper.
Wow.
It was called The Column, and this is our senior year. He had been working for the paper for all 4 years. David was a very good writer, really, really accomplished, smart, witty, had a lot going for him. And being the editor-in-chief is a big deal because you're not just writing your own story. You're helping all of these new writers produce an article to go into this big thing that's got your name on the masthead. And I mean, he had to give it everything. It was basically a full-time job while he was going to school, while he was actually working to pay his bills and whatever. So we were big fans, super we were encouraging in the kinds of ways that buddies are. And that's by just kind of dogging on him a lot. Yeah. And I look back at it, and this is going to sound more critical or maybe more mean than it was, but this was the kind of buddy kind of thing. It would come, the column would come out on Fridays, and by Friday night we would submit to him our edits.
Critique,
corrections and typos and all that stuff. And so we didn't get involved beforehand. Nobody was off. This is the thing that I look back on. We all spent the time to read it with our red pen. Which if we had done it, if we had done it the day before.
Did he appreciate this?
I think in maybe a sick kind of way. He maybe did a little bit.
It improved his writing skills.
Well, the issues weren't really his writing. The issues were all of these other young writers. He was just the one putting this whole thing.
Them.
Well, he was
editor, but he took other people's.
He's
stuff.
editor in chief, right? And so he was for sure writing articles in it, which were very good. But he was also compiling and helping copy edit and construct and shape and all that stuff. And so
I've helped people that are writing books. I tell them, I said, send it over to me, and I'll just because I have a knack of picking out the missing words.
Yeah.
The wrong. I'm not great on pronunciation yet. The column. Where do you use? I never can figure out where that little thing goes when you.
The comma or what?
No, the one above between the S and the word.
Apostrophe.
Yeah, but it's used in three different places.
Right.
Again, my English major that I dated, she probably knows all that stuff. But
she for sure does. Yeah, for sure. Story is the driving force for us here at Switchboard. Story is also the reason that Chit Chat exists. We tell stories of the people around us through photos, videos, branding, and websites. Story helps us find meaning, and it draws a community together, and we would love to help tell your story. You can find us at www.switchboard.mn. We would love to meet you. We'd love to talk with you and learn more about the story that you are trying to tell and how our story-driven marketing tools can help you communicate better. Can't wait to talk to you soon. Well, sweet. So you had said that you live in St. Joe.
Yes, St. Joseph.
You graduated high school in Uppsala. Have you been in central Minnesota that whole time?
No. Actually, I had a very interesting childhood because I was an Army brat. So a lot of those Friday notes are about I had my 7th birthday in Germany on the way to Vienna. I had my 10th birthday on the ship coming back from Vienna. I was traumatized in Vienna because we were actually occupying the country. And so there was a Russian sector, a French sector, a British sector, an American sector. And there was changing of the guard down. And so I got shot in the leg by a pellet gun from a Viennese, in their lederhosen. All the kids, all the boys had lederhosen. I don't know about the girls, but all the boys had lederhosen. And then one time, I was kind of the leader of a small gang. I was probably age 9. A little bunch of street urchins running around right near our apartment. And there was a huge mansion across from our apartment. In our apartment, my dad was a sergeant. It was a very nice apartment on the second floor, 41 Gregor Mendelstrasse. And I knew that because I had found a New Testament that I had as a child that said Gary Osberg, 41 Gregor Mendelstrasse. So anyway, the colonel was occupying the mansion, and he had a huge fenced-in yard, and he had 2 boxer dogs and my brother Bill, he tells me now that it was he that put his mitten through the fence, and the dog took his mitten, and I said, I'll go get your mitten. So I opened the gate, and I started walking towards the dogs, and they saw me coming, and they ran and jumped up on me and scratched me. And
as boxers do.
I lay down like this, covering my face, and they chewed off all the clothing on my legs. I have 17 scars on my body. Now, because we were not really welcome in Vienna, the crowd kind of just gathered outside until the fireman, we called him the fireman because he put coal in our furnace in the basement of our apartment building. He came in and dragged me out of there.
Wow.
So then I walked home, and I had no sleeves and no pants, just the shell of the jacket in the middle.
Wow.
And my mother fainted dead away.
Yeah.
So I spent many, many weeks in the hospital because there was no way to stitch them up. The flesh was gone. Just chunks were taken out.
Gary. Wow.
So anyway, I spent a lot of weeks in the hospital and penicillin shots twice a day, and the short needle one, which is the one that really hurts bad, in my butt. So that happened. And then I learned how to swim really well because there was a pool there at that hospital, and the soldiers would sit around and throw groschens, which was like a penny in Viennese money, Austrian money, and I would dive to the bottom of the pool. The last week that I was there, I spent a lot of time outside. So
I had almost the same thing happen.
You got chewed by dogs?
No, just one small little bite.
1 versus 17.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about it.
I got a butterfly stitch.
Oh.
Yeah, a butter.
Why did a dog attack you?
As a kid, I hopped off a stool, and the dog was on the ground, and I landed on the tail.
So
and
it was just defensive move.
Yeah, it just like little yip and bit my cheek.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you got a scar there?
Yeah, there is actually still a tiny little scar there. But I think that's the same, right? Like my one little.
Where is my scar?
I believe you.
There it is, way up there. See, because when I was 9, it was down there. But there, that was probably the worst one.
Gnarly.
It is, yeah.
It's incredible that you're still alive.
Well, yeah, I've learned things like, and watching, we talked about, we're going to end with a recommendation, but I started on Yellowstone because somebody highly recommended it. I can't do it.
The show Yellowstone?
No, I got, what is it, Peacock? I got Peacock so I could watch a Gopher basketball game. That's why I got Peacock.
Okay.
And then that didn't turn out very good. So then I was telling about, they said, well, Yellowstone's really great. It's better. It's just my second favorite next to Breaking Bad. And I had watched Breaking Bad 3 times, all 6 seasons.
All right.
I really like Breaking Bad. So anyway, but in there's a young girl that gets traumatized by an accident with a horse. Her mother is killed. And so this psychologist said that when a trauma happens, a very serious traumatic event happens to a child, they sometimes stay at that level. They don't advance. That's kind of scary. Now, my granddaughter, Kristen, when I did all those folders, she is a psychology major, so I have to ask her about this. But I really was a troubled child. I was a juvenile delinquent. When we moved to Uppsala in '56, I formed another gang. I had a gang in Vienna.
Right, that Viennese gang.
I got another gang in Uppsala.
The Uppsala gangs are tougher, I think.
All the gas caps in town.
Okay.
We just stole everybody's gas cap.
Like off their car?
Off their cars.
Wow.
So
trouble.
Anyway, but one of the members of the gang couldn't take it anymore and confessed because everybody was wondering.
The guilt,
whole town,
right, the guilt.
Where are the gas caps going? And there was a printing press. Old man Miller actually had a newspaper that came out once a week. And I don't know if there's any records of the missing gas caps. But finally, this kid gave up. I told it, and so we all got busted. And so the constable Earl Metzger, called us in, and he said, "Well, where are the gas caps?" I said, "Well, they're in a gunny sack, and they're in a culvert." Well, so he had to go. He got the gunny sack full, and everybody had to come to his grabber and pick out their gas cap. So, and then later on, I was the youngest member of another club called the Black Knights Car Club, which was had legitimate beginnings. We had good intentions. The oldest member, who was a high school dropout, no names here, he had a 36 Chevy Coupe. And so my mother had rented a house. There was a garage. We cleaned out the garage, put the 36 Chevy Coupe in there. Well, we had no tools, so we could steal those. So we started stealing things, and we got busted again. And the sheriff came to my mother's door with a search warrant,
right?
Because there was some of the guys got even more serious about stealing and ended up badly. So we all were put on probation.
Gary, again, you and I are the same. I was in a scooter gang.
A scooter gang.
In college, which I think I've said on here before, but yeah,
okay.
49cc, small little scooters driving all over the metro. Los Tres Banditos. We thought it meant the three bandits. But the os after bandito means little. And so we're the three little bandits. So I was in a club too.
Right. I don't know. Organizing clubs seems to be a thing for me.
That's right. That's right. We didn't do any stealing. No theft on ours.
Well, only thing I did was I had a broken arm because of a car accident. So I had a sleeve. So the socket set fit right into that.
Into the sling.
Into the sling.
Yeah. All right. What do you love about being in Central Minnesota? You've been here you've been in some capacity.
We came back and spent most of my time in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
And then we and when I was 30 years old, my wife's mother, Irene, sent us an auction flyer. There was a farm that was up for auction on Cedar Lake, west of Uppsala.
Yeah.
And I had just started making some serious money in office furniture sales. And I had a client, Bill Green. He worked with Red Owl. And he had a lake place. And so when I told him about this, he said, "Oh, Gary, you got to get a lake place. Minnesota, it's just the greatest thing." I said, "Well, it's a farm." He said, "Well, it's a." So I went to my banker, another guy named Green. Can't remember his first name, but his last name was Green also. Shillard National Bank in St. Louis Park. And he said, "Well, you're doing well. Why don't just see what had happened? Go up there." So I went up there, and it was a cute little white house on a lake. My wife took me in the barn and said, "Gary, I want this. And here's how you do it when you're bidding. When it's your turn, you do not hesitate." See, her and her mother, Irene, the one my mother-in-law who had sent us that flyer saying there was a farm for auction on September 15th, 1973. They went to a lot of auctions and bought stuff. So she said.
So they knew how to do it.
They knew how to do it. You don't hesitate.
Because you show it show some strength.
Strength, absolutely.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right. So we had agreed that we would pay $50,000 for this place, and there was only two bidders, me and a guy named Lee Bolstead. And so I think I bid $50,000. And he milked $50,500 out of the other guy, just the auctioneer. And then finally Lee said, "Okay, to $50,500. The auctioneer turned to me, and I just nodded my head.
Yep.
51.
Yep.
And then the other guy, Lee, he just stormed away. They told me, "That kid will never quit." And he walked away.
Huh.
So we had bid $51,000. Turned out it was 900 feet of lakeshore, 32 acres.
Incredible.
I had $700 in the savings account.
Yeah.
So I had to go to town, and from Irene Rudy, my mother-in-law, got a check for $3,000. Oh, I forgot to tell you the part about I didn't have that cashier's check for $3,000. So I had to say to the banker, who was my dad's best man at my dad's wedding, I said, "Bud, I want to bid, but I didn't bring the check for $3,000. I'll get it afterwards." And he should have said, no, you should have said that. Rules are the rules. He said, he thought about it for a long time, and then he nodded his head, yes, too. So I had clearance from him. So we had to drive to town and get the check for $3,000 from Irene.
For the down
Luckily,
payment.
she had $3,000 in the bank. I didn't even know, I didn't, but she did.
Yeah.
So we came back.
What year was that?
1973. Agnes Olson was a widow, no children.
She's the one who was selling it?
Yeah. She handed me the keys. in 73, you didn't wait for closing.
Right.
She just, here's the keys.
Here it is.
You bought it.
Yeah.
And I said to this guy who's taking all the wood out of the woodshed, I said, wait, I just bought
bought
plate.
that.
But you didn't buy the wood in the woodshed. That was a separate item on the bid. It was after you went to town to get the $3,000. So anyway, so the guy cleaned out all the wood from the woodshed.
Yep.
So we had a woodshed with no wood, but we had the keys
Yep.
to a nice little farm.
Fun.
We lost it to the banks because I tried to save the world from energy in the late 70s, and I
Didn't work.
mortgaged it 3 times. And so
Sad.
we lost it.
I met my wife at Camp Lebanon, which
Oh, that's
is
right.
in Uppsala
Yeah.
on Cedar
You
Lake.
know what I'm
So
talking about then.
That little lake
Yeah.
is by far, without a close second, my favorite lake
Yeah.
in all of Minnesota.
It is wonderful.
Yeah, beautiful. Really, really
So
beautiful lake.
her brother, Virgil, was in California, and he became our partner. So we cut a deal with the owners. Agnes's brother was an attorney. So it was we had a 5-year contract for deed with a balloon, and the payment was $300 a month with 8% interest. So Virgil sent me a check for $150, and it was all in my name. I mean, Virgil had no position at all. It was just a handshake deal. And so I would write a check to Agnes Olson's brother or Agnes Olson probably, every month for $300. So then when the 5-year came up, we sold our house in Coon Rapids and we moved up there.
Gary, thanks for this is super fun. An interesting and fun conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know you. As you kind of hinted, we close every episode with an unpaid ad. Is there someone, something, or some idea?
Yes. It comes from my son, Eric Osberg. He recommended a show on Netflix called Stutz, S-T-U-Z, Stutz.
Okay.
And what it is it's Jonah Hill doing this. Jonah Hill is making a documentary about his psychologist, or psychiatrist probably, not a psychologist, probably a psychiatrist, Dr. Phil Stutz. And it's an hour and 35 minutes, and it's really good. Everybody should get Netflix. It was a pain in the butt getting back on because I couldn't get my password to work, but I called the 800 number that's in my iPhone, and I finally got some lady who didn't speak clear English, but she did get me.
She got it figured out.
And now I can watch it. And I put into my new iPhone 15, I have put in for next March 20th, watch Stutz.
Because it's coming out.
I'm going to watch it every month.
All right. My unpaid ad, since you did a show, I'll do one too. There is a show on Apple. So like it's Apple streaming service called Drops of God.
Okay, I'll drop
It is about wine.
About wine?
Yeah, it's a show. You know, it's not a documentary or anything. It's about a really wealthy, the most famous kind of like wine connoisseur in the whole world.
Wow.
Built this giant wine empire, and he dies, and he has one daughter, and he leaves this empire, this giant wine empire, to his daughter, but he has a young Japanese protege, a young man. And he leaves them. It's a competition. She doesn't really want it, but she kind of feels like she needs to do it. And there's this competition all relating to wine, but she doesn't know wine or care about wine, in part because her dad left when she was little. So there's kind of this like family thing.
Sure.
But it's about the series is about them, these two young individuals, trying to win this giant wine empire. And it's one of the most beautifully shot shows I've ever seen. Drops of God on Apple.
All right. I got Apple.
Wonderful.
All right.
Gary,
Thank you.
treat. Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome.